let's go ahead. We're going to read the scripture here for Revelation chapter 13, and then we'll get back into it. But all the pieces, the things that we talked about the last couple weeks, all of this applies to this scripture, and now we're adding to that what we've already discussed. So if you can remember the things that we talked about, that would be better. So let's read this. Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 through 4 is this first slide. And you can see a seven-headed beast rising up. This comes from John the Apostle. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea. And remember, we talked about that sea. Most of the beasts come out of that Mediterranean Sea area, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. His feet were like, as it were, the feet of a bear, and his mouth is the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat, great authority. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death. His deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. They worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him. And, I think that that statement right there, if you could actually see in your mind, or the vision that John saw when he saw this beast unlike any other rising up, it's very easy for him to conclude who is like this beast and who would be able to make war with him. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. We've said on many occasions 42 months is 1,260 days. It's also 3.5 years. It's based upon a 360 day per year, which is what it's not 365 days. The difference is 365 and a quarter is a solar calendar. 360 is a lunar calendar, and God uses the lunar calendar here for the timing. But this, knowing this, gives you insight in various different understanding of prophecy. So, but anyway, I'm going to go back to verse 5 here. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue for 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations, and all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. You notice in verse 8 it doesn't say some of the people of the earth are going to worship him. That latter-day kingdom, it says all that dwell upon the earth. That's a lot of people, right? In that time, all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. What that insight that gives us, if you're in around at that time, during that 42-month period, and your name is not written in the Lamb's book of life, then you are going to end up worshiping this beast. Verse 9, if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. And here we see we've actually given names to these 7 heads. And you can see them up here. And I will guarantee you that, you can collect commentaries from, all these different prophecy teachers. And this is one of the areas that they miss it. And the reason they miss it is because they get correct Rome. There's usually no disagreement that one head is Rome, and one is Persia, and one is Babylon, and one is Greece. They don't have that problem because for 2,000 years, people that have addressed the Scripture have said that those were 4 of the 7 heads. But then they don't know what to do with the rest of them. And so you get all these different ideas. Well, this head is this head, and this head means that, and this head, and they come up with all this subjectivity. But you know what? We took the approach We looked at the book of Daniel for the heads. And it just coincidentally, and I don't believe in coincidences, I'm saying that almost out of sarcasm, but there were these 7 heads pointed out in the book of Daniel, and by applying them, I believe that we have the truth here. And actually what we've been teaching fits like a hand in a glove here. But so those 7 heads we've identified: Rome, Persia is actually Iran today, Babylon is where Iraq is, Macedonia is Greece, Egypt. All of your commentators seem to get this one correct, but they don't get it correct for the same reason. They get it correct only because they think about Moses, and Moses was significant in Egypt, and they say, well, Egypt must have been one of them. But that's not why Egypt is one of them. Egypt is one of them because in the days of the Ptolemies, when we talked about the king of the north and the king of the south, Egypt was the king of the south. That's why it fits here. Not because of Moses and the Pharaoh, but that's why most people get it right. Syria, they never get right. Most of them say Assyria. Syria and Syria is not the same thing. They say Assyria because that's the kingdom that the northern kingdom of Israel went into captivity with. But that's not why. Once again, Syria is here because they were the king of the north in the book of Daniel. And then the only one that's in question then, or was left out, is Thrace. And remember, John said the riddle was 5 of these heads have already passed away. One is, which was Rome, and then one is yet to come. And we see that when you take Thrace, Thrace is Turkey. And Thrace actually has a whole, or Turkey, if you will, has a whole chapter in Revelation devoted to itself. And we went through that. Chapter 9 all talks about the Muslims and the Turkish Empire. And we've seen that. In other prophecies, when you get into Ezekiel, chapter 38, and you've got this great coalition of forces that are going to attack Israel. Most of the prophecy teachers tell you it's Russia. However, if you look at the maps, if you look back in Genesis, Gog and Magog and all the different people that are listed there, they were all part of Anatolia, which is modern day Turkey. So there's good reason to believe that we're right on target with the identification of these heads. And of course, the one that's circled here, that was the answer to John's riddle, where 5 had passed and one was, and that was Rome, and then one that had not risen yet was Thrace. Then we talked about this in the last couple of weeks. In fact, we've talked about this on different occasions, but this is one of the 4 beasts of Daniel. These also came up out of the sea. And we compared Daniel a lot with the book of Revelation so far. We said that this 4th beast, obviously, in fact, everybody seems to get this right in prophecy teachers, no matter who you pick up. Well, I shouldn't say everybody. There are some deviations there. But most people will tell you this represented the Roman Empire. And what we thought was significant, you have the 10 horns, but remember there was an 11th horn that came up. And that's the one that's significant to us, because we said that 11th head coming up, Rome passed away, and then the Holy Roman Empire rose up. And the Holy Roman Empire is important for latter-day prophecy, and included in the Holy Roman Empire, included when you see this horn, the Holy Roman Empire actually consisted of 2 leaders. One was the emperor, and the other was the false prophet, who is the institution of the papacy. We also talked last week about how Charlemagne is actually the first. He rises up. He is the first one that's associated with the Holy Roman Empire. He's the first one associated with this horn. And if it wasn't for Charlemagne and the help that he gave him, the papacy probably wouldn't even exist today. On the left-hand side here, you see at the bottom of this, it says the First Reich. Because that's exactly what the Holy Roman Empire was. Charlemagne was the beginning of the First Reich, which is the first German emperor or empire. So let's read on the side here under Charlemagne. Charlemagne reigned for 46 years with many wars and conquests. His kingdom spanned Germany, France, Switzerland, Austria, Hungary, Belgium, Spain, and Italy. So there's a good portion of the European countries there that it spanned. And that was called the Holy Roman Empire. And here's something that's interesting. After the Roman Empire had got established and the bishop had been appointed, and maybe we're getting into around 500, maybe 500 AD, there was a lot of talk about, the church is going to be usher in a millennium, 1,000 years of peace. Of course, there wasn't 1,000 years of peace, but there's this teaching of this millennium. And of course, the Bible in the Revelation talks about 1,000-year millennium, right? But what's interesting, the Holy Roman Empire continued from the time of Charlemagne for 1,000 years until Napoleon brought it down. I think that's highly coincidental. I'm not saying the 1,000 years matches prophecy. What I'm saying is it's just very coincidental that they had 1,000 years, because that's what they were teaching, that the church was going to rule for 1,000 years and then Jesus was going to come. Well, Jesus didn't come after that 1,000 years. In fact, what happened? What they taught was the church was going to keep getting more and more victorious. And what happened at the end of the 1,000 years? The Pope was thrown in prison. And really, he suffered a mortal wound. And the beast is supposed to suffer a mortal wound. And so that's what happened. But Charlemagne, he's the First Reich, and we have some information about the empire also. And you'll see here, I have his head here. Now, just because I have his head here, we said that the First Reich actually lasts for 1,000 years. The First Reich of the Holy Roman Empire lasts for about 1,000 years. Now, obviously, Charlemagne didn't live for 1,000 years. He's just the first one. We have his picture up there, okay? And we said the First Reich, just so you can associate the First Reich with Charlemagne. If you're German, if you're from Germany, or you consult some German teachers, for the most part they say, well, really the First Reich had to do not with Charlemagne, but Otto the Great. You can see some writing on the side under Otto's picture. Otto the First was also known as Otto the Great. He was king of Germany from 936 973. He was the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire from 962 to 973. And the term Holy Roman Empire was first used in 962 AD. And all that's true. And if you want to think that he's the beginning of the First Reich, then you can do that if you want to. But I'm pretty convinced that Charlemagne was the beginner, or the beginning of it. The Pope put the crown on his head. He told him he was the emperor of the new Holy Roman Empire, and the rest is kind of history. But I just wanted to alert you to that. If you're doing some research on yourself, you might see that they say Otto is, but it doesn't really matter. Otto was part of the Holy Roman Empire.
I think they say the Ottoman Empire was the first Reich.
Not Ottoman.
Otto was the first Reich because they wanted to be German. Charlemagne's French.
Yeah, Charlemagne, and that's true. And Charlemagne was French. And remember, we don't have it in this presentation, but Charlemagne's kingdom was divided into three. He was the king of the Franks. He became the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. After his death, I think it was his three grandchildren took it over. It was divided into three parts. One was the kingdom or the nation of Germany. One was the nation of France. And the other one was the nation of Italy. And his grandchildren, I believe it's his grandchildren, they took over each section. And so, yes, by not saying that Charlemagne, a French guy, was the first emperor, then you have the German exclusivity. Enter, about 1,000 years later, after Charlemagne, enter Napoleon. Because Napoleon's the one who brings down the First Reich. What's interesting is Napoleon is the one who gives the mortal wound to the Pope, to the papacy, right? And now he's also the one who gives a mortal wound to the First Reich, or the emperor of the Holy Roman Empire and the papacy. So basically about the same time. Actually, the first pope went into prison 1798. And it was by the antics of Napoleon. Napoleon is, if you know anything about it, he's trying to take over all of the Europe to be his own emperor. In fact, he claimed himself to be emperor. So we put a big old red X over Charlemagne because what I'm trying to say here is the First Reich received a mortal wound. And if you just read Revelation chapter 13, it says the beast would rise up, and then he'll receive a mortal wound. And we said before, a mortal wound means you die. And you don't come back. People that die don't come back alive, right? But the strange thing is, in this prophecy about the Antichrist, it says when the beast receives the mortal wound, he comes back. That's the miracle, right? That's the amazing thing. He comes back to life. Well, here's the thing. The papacy received a mortal wound, but they came back. The Holy Roman Emperor, the First Reich, received a mortal wound, and it came back. Whether you want to say that it was Otto or it was Charlemagne, in either case, the First Reich received a mortal wound. But it came back. We know it came back because we know Hitler. We know a lot about Hitler, and Hitler was the Third Reich. You can't have the Third Reich without the First Reich and the Second Reich. So we know there was a second one, right? So if the second one came, then the first one received this mortal wound, not the individual. And, of course, the title up on that slide is, I Would Like to Know the Truth of the Fourth Beast, right? You see, here we say the Holy Roman Empire was Germany, was the First Reich, and it received a mortal wound. Okay? This is where we get into, and I only bring this up because we mentioned it with Napoleon. I want you to get an understanding of what Napoleon... really what Napoleon was trying to accomplish. Napoleon rose up right after the French Revolution. The French Revolution followed in Europe. It followed the Reformation. People were getting a lot of Protestants were getting free of the whole thought of being subservient and bowing down and kissing the Pope's feet, and a lot of people were rising up against papacy, right? Well, that's happening all in throughout Germany and throughout all the areas that were covered primarily by the Reformation. The interesting thing is that France was always the most loyal supporters of the papacy. There was a lot of Catholicism in France. But you have this revolution going on, and theirs wasn't really to become, because they were becoming Protestants, they were actually turning against all religion. I mean, they looked at the organized religion was the papacy, and they were trying to throw the papacy off their back, and they didn't want to submit to it anymore. They could see through it, if you will. And so, in fact, they called it the Bloody Reign of Terror. People were beheaded at the time. They did all terrible kinds of things. The rebels rebelling against the Catholics, and there was this war. Well, so Napoleon comes around. His first agenda is he needs to make peace throughout the French kingdom, throughout France, right? So he's trying to unite these Catholics that are fighting against, the rebels, and he's trying to become the emperor of France. And of course, he did recognize that one of the big problems that they've had it with the papacy. However, there's a good part of France who still is Catholic and still believes in the papacy. So he does end up throwing the Pope in prison. And he initially seems to be anti-Catholicism, and I read that some commentators say that Napoleon, when he did imprison the Pope in the first place, he had no intention of Catholicism ever having any influence again in his kingdom. But, of course, he was a smart man, very strategic, and he realized, just like we talked about Constantine years ago, Constantine was smart. If you can remember, Constantine was the emperor that he made that place, Constantinople. We talked about that. He split the Roman Empire. He put the Pope in charge because he was going to what? Use Christianity to control the people. Well, Napoleon's basically going the same way. He's like, well, I don't like the papacy, but I'm not going to throw away the whole benefit of having this religion and use this religion over the people. So that just gives you a little narrative. And I mean, you can find out more information. You can read various ideas about it. And I'm not trying to sway you at all on history per se. But let's get into just a couple slides on it so you can see what he did. So in this slide with the Pope Pius, I like that name. I think by his name, he must have been a very pious man. I mean, he must have really been humble to name himself Pope Pius. I know the name is spelled a little different. But Pope Pius VI was expelled from the Papal States by French troops in 1798. If you'll remember, we added up to 1,260 years last time, and it came to 1798, and that's exactly when the Pope is thrown in prison. But let's read this. Pope Pius VI lived from 1717 to 1799. He reigned as Pope from 1775 till his death in 1799. At the outbreak of the French Revolution, Pius VI witnessed the suppression of the old Galician church as well as the confiscation of pontifical and ecclesiastical possessions in France. He saw an effigy of himself burnt by the Parisians at the Palace Royal. The French Revolution broke out in 1789, and he saw the events as a sign of opposition against the social order ordained by God, and also viewed it as a conspiracy against the church, and which would be the natural, that would be natural to assume that, especially if you were loyal to Catholicism. In 1796, French Republican troops under the command of Napoleon Bonaparte, invaded Italy and defeated the papal troops. General Berthier marched to Rome, entered it unopposed on 10th of February 1798, proclaiming a Roman Republic, demanded of the Pope the renunciation of his temporal authority. And that was kind of a derogatory thing to say anyway, because he was insinuating that his authority was temporal. In other words, it was temporary, and now it's time to renunciate that. The Pope refused to do that. Upon his refusal, he was taken prisoner. There it is. He died on 29th August 1799, having then reigned longer than any other pope. So it's interesting that God kind of gave him the longest reign as pope, I think, to make him stick out and to draw our attention to what happened. The next slide talks about the Papal States. You know anything about the papacy? The papacy is not only a religion. The Pope is actually a king, and he actually is a literal king over an empire of his own, or a kingdom of his own, called the Papal States. You can see it. You can see it right here. I'll point to it here. Here you have Italy, and here's Rome, and Rome is inside the Papal States here. And the king, the Pope, is complete sovereign, has complete sovereignty over that. Even it's within Italy, but it's not part of Italy. So Rome is not part of Italy. Rome is part of the papacy. So anyway, the French Revolution proved as disastrous for the temporal territories of the papacy as it was for the Roman Church in general. When French invasion of Italy in 1796, the legations, which is the Papal States, northern territories, were seized and became part of the Cisalpine Republic. 2 years later, the Papal States as a whole were invaded by French forces who declared a Roman Republic. The Papal States were restored in June 1800 to Pope Pius VII, who who took up residency once again, but the French under Napoleon again invaded in 1808, and this time the remainder of the states of the church were annexed to France, forming the departments of Tibur and Trasimene. With the fall of the Napoleonic system in 1814, the Papal States were restored once more. So it did keep coming back and forth, but this really damaged. This is the mortal wound to Catholicism. If the Papal States are taken away, then the Pope has nothing. He's not a king anymore. He has no territory. He has no kingdom, right? And so he lost all those, and then the new Pope, he got him back. Napoleon gave him back, but then Napoleon took him back away from him. Even though they returned, the only reason he got him back was because the Allies came and they beat over Napoleon, and they got the Papal States back to. Eventually back to the papacy, but then the Kingdom of Italy took them away. So, I mean, ever since that 1798, it's like the mortal wound hit the papacy, and it wasn't until Mussolini that they came back into the power that they had before. We'll look at Pope Pius VII here, and we read here he was captured also as prisoner by Napoleon. So 2 popes were made prisoner by Napoleon. When Pius VII subsequently, now he caused a problem. Look, he excommunicated Napoleon. If you are in the Catholic Church and the Pope excommunicates you, that means you have no hope for salvation as far as they're concerned. You are in hell, and you will be in hell forever. And so the Pope says, ha, 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 I've excommunicated you. And Napoleon's like, I don't give a flip what you do. In fact, so Napoleon captures him. But anyway, it says, so he subsequently excommunicated Napoleon. One of Napoleon's officers saw an opportunity to gain praise. Although Napoleon had captured the castle St. Angelo and intimated the Pope by, listen to this, I think this is funny, because he excommunicates him, so Napoleon turns around, he points cannons at the papal bedroom. And he did not instruct one of his most ambitious lieutenants, Lieutenant Radet, to kidnap the Pope. Yet once Pius VII was a prisoner, Napoleon did not offer his release. The Pope was moved throughout Napoleon's territories in great sickness at times, though most of his confinement took place at Savannah. Napoleon sent several delegations of his supporters to pressure the Pope on various issues, yielding power and signing a new concordat with France. The Pope remained in confinement for over 6 years and did not return to Rome until May 24th, 1814, when the Allied forces freed the Pope during a pursuit of Napoleon's forces. And you'll see in a little while why Napoleon, besides giving the mortal wound to the papacy, besides giving the mortal wound to the First Reich, which is the Holy Roman Empire, he also is further important for the rest of the fulfillment and the rest of prophecy. So we're going to see this now. Probably one of the most significant personalities in Bible prophecy, and you don't hear much about him, but you're going to see why he is. Napoleon Bonaparte was the greatest military genius of the 19th century. He conquered most of Western Europe and Egypt for France, while instituting reforms in these new territories aimed at guaranteeing civil liberties and improving the quality of life. See, he's embracing their whole idea. The reason for the revolution, they're trying to throw off all this dominating of the papacy. So Napoleon says, okay, I'm going to make sure that you have your civil liberties, and I'm also going to make sure that you can worship, because most of them were Catholic, right? And so you can return back to Catholic. Those of you who are faithful to Catholicism, you're still going to have Catholicism, but you're not going to have that Pope. We'll have our own Pope. Well, that way I can control the Catholic Church. And so there was no papacy out of the papal states and out of Rome. So anyway, Here we read, Napoleon crowned himself. Now the emperors of the Reichs of Germany, the Holy Roman Empire, they were actually crowned by the Pope. But Napoleon crowned himself as Emperor of France. By the way, now the First Reich didn't receive when Napoleon crowned himself as Emperor of France, there was still a emperor in Germany. And they were crowned about the same time. So Napoleon goes ahead and says, "I'm the emperor." And there is no more Holy Roman Empire. So he crowns himself Emperor of France in 1804. He introduced reforms intended to unify the revolution-fractured nation. On July 12, 1806, 16 German princes gathered in Paris formally signed an Act of Confederation. The act dissolved the connection with the Holy Roman Empire and, in effect, allied them to France as satellites. As a result, Francis II, who had proclaimed himself Emperor of Austria in 1804, when he foresaw the dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire, resigned his title of Holy Roman Emperor, and the empire came to an end. So there was the end of the Holy Roman Empire that we talked about. And so there's a mortal wound. The papacy got a mortal wound. The Holy Roman Empire got a mortal wound. So now the next slide says Napoleon against the nations of Europe. France. Now, obviously, Napoleon is the Emperor of France. France brings down 3 kings. That's kind of coincidentally with the prophecy saying 3 horns will be come down. I'm not saying take it literal. I'm just saying it's interesting. Germany, Italy, and Spain were the 3 kingdoms that Napoleon took down first. The cry of democracy went out throughout France, calling for every able man to fight in this war against democracy and freedom. In other words, they said that they were for democracy and freedom, and they were calling all the people to rise up and revolt. Napoleon is quenching all that. But anyway, the motto of the revolutionaries in the reign of terror that they call it was, "We cannot stop until all Europe is ablaze." And what they meant was literally ablaze, and also that all of Europe would be free from the church and the influence of the church. Some really, what was coming out of that was really antichrist, though. It was really bad. They had this woman. They got a prostitute. They said that her name was Reason. She rode around with her breasts shown, and everybody did all kinds of lascivious sins around her. They went and they took all the gold and the silver and everything, the chalices and everything, out of the churches throughout France, and they used them for all this debauchery, and it was a pretty nasty time there. But it was all because they hated the Catholic Church so much. But after, at least the rebels did, and then of course they're fighting against the Catholics who believed that they were serving Christ. Anyway, after raising France to a position of preeminence in Europe from 1804 to 1813, Napoleon met defeat in 1814 by a coalition of major powers, notably Prussia, Russia, Britain, and Austria. A majority of other nations present at the Congress also pledged troops for the invasion of France, which was to be launched on July 1st, 1815. And Napoleon, by the way, would come. His empire would now, and his being an emperor of France would now come to an end. This next map here, it shows when we said he first brought down 3 kingdoms. Here you have Spain over here. This was France. You had Italy, and up here you had Germany here. Prussia hadn't fallen. You see Austria over here. All of these, we'll see in the next map how much influence Napoleon, how much of the world Napoleon had. Everything that's red was Napoleon's empire. And then everything that's blue there, you see the color blue, that was all the coalitions. So all the participants of the War of the Sixth Coalition. There was actually 7 coalitions that fought against Napoleon until the 7th one actually was his downfall. You can see his influence in North America, South America, some in Africa, and then over in Western Europe. He almost had taken the whole area of Western Europe there. He was not. They say he was not trying to restore the Holy Roman Empire, which makes sense because he did that to the papacy. But nevertheless, he was against the Holy Roman Empire, and he was trying to establish his own empire. Now, here's what I think. For my part, this is what I find is so extraordinary, so amazing with Napoleon. This is why I say he's one of the most important characters for prophecy. You see, here's the United States of America. And before Napoleon, this whole area, Louisiana's Purchase didn't exist as part of the United States of America. And Napoleon sold them this whole piece for $15 million. I mean, that's almost chunk change for pastor. And the whole point here, from 1803 to 1867, in just 64 years, the USA grows by leaps and bounds. Here's a little paragraph about some of the history here. And this is the thing that, this is what set the United States of America to be a powerful nation. I mean, this is what did it. And this is why it happened. Because Napoleon's empire was suffering serious financial needs, he made an incredible deal with President Thomas Jefferson in 1803. For $15 million, he offered the Louisiana Purchase. It was purchased by the United States from France in 1803. It included Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, west of the Mississippi River, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, nearly all of Kansas, the portions of Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, east of the Rocky Mountains, and Louisiana, west of the Mississippi River, including the city of New Orleans. All this was sold for $15 million. I wish I could have bid on that auction. Yeah. Not that I could have paid for it, but the U.S. acquired more than 500 million acres of the richest, most fertile farmland on earth. The USA increased in size by about 140%. And it became the United States of America. I mean, it was already United States, right? But, look how it increased by 140%. It just, this was the boom of their prosperity, right? And this is what it made, Trump says, let's make America great. This is what made America great. Napoleon! Go figure. So now the next interesting part, that the person right around this time now, right around the fall of Napoleon, another individual is born. And his name is Otto von Bismarck. And they say he was the architect of the Second Reich. So Prince Otto Edward Leopold von Bismarck, a Prussian statesman, united the German states into one empire. Bismarck is noted for saying that the great problems of Germany would not be settled by speeches and resolutions, but by blood and iron. Remember the beast had iron legs? Remember the beast had iron teeth? It's kind of interesting. He said, by iron, and that influence of the Holy Roman Empire again. I think that it would do good to hear some politicians today. I love that statement. He says, because let's put the United States in there. I'm thinking, what if they stood up and say the great problems of the United States of America was not going to be settled by speeches and resolutions? That's what they're trying to do. No, we need something done, and we need something done sooner than later, right? And so I think that's. He was very wise from the German perspective, and very successful. Otto von Bismarck. He lived from 1815 to 1898. He was born on April 1st, April Fool's Day, 1815, at Schönhausen. He's considered to be the founder of the German Empire. For nearly 3 decades, he shaped the fortunes of Germany from 1862 to 1873 as Prime Minister of Prussia, and from 1870 1871 to 1890 as Germany's first chancellor. Now, what I'm going to tell you in a minute is the one who is the emperor of the Second Reich. However, there's a lot of people in Germany who still would give the credit to Otto on Bismarck. Anyway, so the next slide shows us William I, whose name actually, if you're German, is Wilhelm. But he was the emperor of the Second Reich. Prussian King William I was proclaimed German emperor in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles outside of Paris on January 18, 1871. He was made emperor after a coalition of German states under Prussia. Remember, Otto's the one that got all those coalition together. He's the architect. So he was made emperor after a coalition of German states under Prussian leadership was victorious over France in the Franco-Persian War. In 1871, the year that marked the emergence of Germany as a great world power, and this led to the declaration of the German Empire, Deutsches Reich, which means the Second Reich, in 1870, and the proclamation of King William of Prussia as German Emperor in Versailles in 1871. I would know the truth of the fourth beast, and here, oh, lo and behold, we have a Second Reich. So, as I was telling you, Germany, the Holy Roman Empire, they received a mortal wound under Napoleon, and now what happened? They rise back. You know, we've questioned for years, how will the beast receive a mortal wound and then come back? And God's done it several times prophetically. And here we have it back. So now we have the Second Reich. Well, we don't know how many there will be, but so far there's two, right? Well, the thing that follows shortly after is everybody knows about World War I, right? You mean World War I has something to do with prophecy? I would think so. In fact, we had, and I don't remember which one it was, but we actually had some prophecies that pinpointed the exact time. If you'll remember, we showed where prophecies, I believe it was from, it was either from Daniel or Ezekiel, went to the exact year for World War I to take place. And so if you go back, you'll see it. The immediate cause of the war between Austria-Hungary and Serbia was the assassination on June 28, 1914 at Sarajevo in Bosnia, then part of Austro-Hungarian Empire, now in Bosnia-Herzegovina, of Archduke Francis Ferdinand, heir presumptive to the Austrian and Hungarian thrones by Gavrilo Princip, a Serb nationalist. So that's what started it all. It was an assassination. Down at the bottom here, we said 28 of the World War I began in 1914 AD. 28 of these nations, known as the Allies, the other side, Germany and their allies, were actually called the Central Powers. But 28 of the nations that stood against Germany, known as the Allies and Associated Powers, included Britain, France, Russia, Italy, and the United States. And there was 28 in all, but those are the major ones. They opposed the coalition known as the Central Powers, consisting of Germany, Austria-Hungary, the Ottoman Empire, which is now Turkey, and Bulgaria. Oh, look, Turkey comes into the picture again. And there's a reason Turkey comes into the picture. Because at 1914, World War I, who has Jerusalem? Turkey. Sure. Turkey. Remember, he's the seventh. Turkey was the seventh head on the beast. And we saw him rise up in Revelation chapter 9. We saw we saw the Dome of the Rock. We talked about it. And Turkey at this time, and during World War I, Turkey has Jerusalem. Okay? So that's important. It's called the Ottoman Empire. Remember we talked about that statue, that Nebuchadnezzar, and there was the head and the arms and the belly and the legs. And we said it came down to the feet and the toes. And we know from the prophecy, when you get down to the end of the image, Messiah's coming, right? Well, look at this. If you take the major powers here, you got the Central Powers. You got one foot. You got the Germany, Austria. Now the 2 feet kind of represent Europe there, where all the warring was over. But you have Germany, Austria, Hungary, Bulgaria, and Turkey, and then you have the Allies: Britain, France, Russia, Italy, and the United States. Of course, the United States is not really part of Europe, but It's interesting that you have like 10 toes, right? Now, who's the winner? Well, we are, but actually it's Britain-led. Pretty much Britain comes out as the victor. And it's interesting that there's these 10 toes. I want to point this picture out to you because I'm going to address it again in a minute here. We're going to see how did Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, lose control of Jerusalem. Well, in 1917 AD, and we've talked about this before, the British general Edmund Allenby led his troops to surround the city of Jerusalem. Allenby arranged to have every available aircraft to fly over Jerusalem. The Turks, having never seen aircraft before, were extremely frightened. As the aircraft flew low over Jerusalem, it's reported that one of the pilots dropped a note demanding the surrender signed by General Allenby. I also heard that there were several notes that were dropped, so which one's true, I don't know. But somebody was dropping out these notes to the Turks, and they were written in Arabic. The name Allenby further frightened the Turks, thinking that the name was Allah, meaning God, and Bey, meaning son, which they interpreted as the son of Allah. So in Arabic, the name Allenby looked like it said son of Allah. And in response to the note, the Turks hoisted a white flag and surrendered the city without firing a shot. Now, after 2,000 years, Jerusalem is surrendered by the seventh head of the beast. How many heads are on the beast? 7, right? The last head of the beast has Jerusalem for all that time. In fact, I think the Turks actually were in power, that empire was in power for about 1,000 years also. And they, after all that time, they surrendered Jerusalem without firing a shot. And what that did was open up the doors for Israel to start coming back as prophecy would dictate, right? So the next slide shows us those 10 toes again. And now what I'm suggesting is the 10 toes represent the beginning of the final kingdom. It has to be that way. We're at the end of the image. It has to be that way. And it's not coincidental that we've already covered 7 heads on the beast. And after the 7th beast, we have to be approaching, now we're coming to the final rising up of the kingdom, okay? World War I was over in 1918, and a treaty was made between Weizmann, a future president of a new Jewish state, and Faisal of Arabia, who later became the king of Iraq. It's interesting that Iraq came into prominence in our day. This treaty was to guarantee the acceptance of Jewish immigration to Palestine. So the treaty was signed that they would accept the Jews to come and be in that land. But as soon as they came there, they had nothing but strife and wars. Anyway, look at, now the Second Reich is over, because after World War I, the Second Reich was over. On November 9th, 1918, Germany was now declared to be a republic. Wilhelm II was forced to flee to the Netherlands, and so the curtain closes on the Second Reich and opens on the Weimar Republic. The Holy Roman Empire, Germany, the Second Reich, received a mortal wound. Oh, that's kind of interesting. What we've covered is we had the 7-headed beast. We identified all the 7 heads. The last one was Turkey. Now Turkey has lost Jerusalem at the end of World War I. The next thing the scripture says is, I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. With all of our studies into prophecy and beasts, what do beasts represent? Kingdoms, right? Well, Antichrist, exactly. But kingdoms. And I don't think that this is any different. And usually, I mean, you won't hear very many people pick up on this. Because we've been told all these years, oh, well, this is the false prophet. This is the false prophet. But it's still a beast. And unless God changed his way of doing it, usually when God says this means that, It always means that. And this is so what I see God saying, after we've identified the seventh head, and the seventh head, remember we said the thing they had in common, they had Jerusalem. After the seventh head lost Jerusalem, now he tells us another beast rises up. Who could it be? He said he had two horns like a lamb. He had two. In other words, this beast was unusual because he was like a lamb. Well, who's the Lamb of God? Jesus. I think it's symbolic of saying that this beast says he's Christian. He pretends to be Christian. Well, let's read on here. So he comes out of the earth. He had two horns like a lamb, but he spoke like a dragon. Who's the dragon? Satan, right? And remember, in the first part of Revelation 13, it said about the beast, he said the dragon gave him his power, right? And this is important that you understand. The beast, the final Antichrist case, it's not ferocious and mighty because it's this great world empire, which it is. It's also energized by satanic power. This is Satan. At this time, at the end, Satan has been cast down. He's got 42 months left before he's thrown in prison himself. If you had 42 months left before you went to prison for 1,000 years, wouldn't you make the best time you could? And that's what he's going to do. And he empowers the beast. But anyway, this beast was, he was coming out and he had two horns like a lamb and he spoke like a dragon. He exercises all the power of the first beast before him. He causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, which deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives them that dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by the sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. I'm glad I'm not going to be there. Anyway, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or their foreheads. Or in their foreheads, no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding count the number of the beast, for it is a number of a man, and his number is 666, which is literally 666, right? 666, and we've all heard of 666. How many think there's a mouthful in those scriptures that we just read there? The latter part of 13th chapter. Well, we saw how much was in the first part of 13th chapter, right? Remember, we're describing the Antichrist kingdom here. And there's a lot of details that he's just given us. He's just thrown it at us. And we have to understand what all that is. Now, if we go to this next slide here, I bring your attention back to the book of Daniel. And how many remember there were 4 beasts that came up? And we've talked about these 4 beasts. We've talked about it several times, many classes. We've talked about the meaning of these 4 beasts. Now, for 2,000 years of Christianity, almost everybody that teaches on it, tells us that, well, the lion represented, who knows? The lion represented, they equate it with the head of the image, Babylon. The bear represented Persia. The leopard represented Greece. The 4th beast represented Rome, right? And for 2,000 years we've been taught that. And nobody ever questioned it because we've taught that for 2,000 years. But let me inject this one thing. 2 things, actually. Number 1, remember, God sometimes has the prophecy's fulfilled in one way, and then it can be fulfilled in another way, right? The second thing, in other words, there can be a second fulfillment of the same prophecy. The other thing is that in Scripture, it's interesting because a lot of times God does say, this represents the head of, remember Daniel says the head of gold is Babylon. Daniel said that the silver would be the nation coming after him, and then elsewhere he says that it's Medo-Persia. And he talked about Greece. He named them, right? And we know the other one the fourth one was Rome because Jesus was around in that day. And if you didn't read the Bible, you've seen the movie. You know they were Roman soldiers, right? But I find it really interesting that God never says about these four beasts, He never identifies them. And to me, it reeks. The fact that He doesn't identify, I mean, we've identified them, and for 2,000 years, prophecy teachers have identified them. The church has identified, but this reeks to me of a latter-day fulfillment of these beasts. So, that being said, we're going to jump back to Daniel. Now, watch this. Next slide says, the first was like a lion. You see the lion with wings up there? The first was like a lion. It had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. It was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Did you know William I of England from 1066 to 1087, his insignia was lions? You see his shield there. And we're all familiar with Richard the Lion-Hearted, and his shield is there with the 3 lions. That was his insignia. And when we talked about Britain or England taking over Jerusalem, remember the Turks gave it up, the British headquarters in Jerusalem then displayed the emblem of the lion standing upon his feet, just like you see. What do you think the lion might represent? Anybody have a clue? England, Britain, United Kingdom. Yes. Yes. Now, do we have a definite? Does God say it? No, God doesn't say it, but it seems like there's a lot of evidence to say this lion with its wings plucked off may represent England. Let's see if there's any reason further to believe it. Wasn't Britain very influential? In fact, watch this. There's 7 heads on those beasts. Turkey being the last one. And when the last one comes, another beast rises up, not from the sea, not from the Mediterranean Sea. He said this one comes up from the land, and he's like a lamb. And then we go back here, and Britain was Britain was the one now that has Jerusalem. That's kind of interesting, wouldn't you say? Who had possession of Jerusalem? We've already answered that question. Britain, right? The British kingdom refused to uphold their promise guaranteeing a new Jewish homeland that the Jews could freely return to. Originally, the Jews were supposed to get that. But Britain reneged on it. Britain divided Palestine into 2 territories, making the Jordan River to be the boundary. The Jewish people everywhere felt betrayed by Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was interesting because Winston Churchill was influential in the World War I and in World War II. And they felt betrayed by Winston Churchill. Because they didn't get the land that they thought they were going to, that they were supposed to. In fact, he did what he could to stop it. There would be no new state of Israel. All immigrants were now to become Palestinians. What are we telling them today? We need to divide up the land. Palestinians have to have their own country. Well, wait a minute. Wasn't Jordan given half the land? What are they? They're Arabs. Right? I mean, not really Arab, but they're the same. They're the same as the Palestinians. They already have their land. The people that live there, the Jordanians, they come down. They're passed down from Edomites and the Ammonites and the Moabites. The point here is that they already got their hunk of land, and to give them any more, and then they keep taking away from Israel and saying, well, the Palestinians, they need more, they need more, they need more. And Israel's portion keeps shrinking. And our country has been dictating over and over, oh, we want to split up Israel. And they want to give them a little sliver, which is impossible for them to defend. And what will happen if Israel cannot defend when they're surrounded by 2 billion Muslims that want to kill them? They will destroy them. They will wipe them, just like Iranians, the Ayatollahs have said. They're gonna nuke them off the map. So anyway, that's our history, and that's why they felt betrayed by Winston Churchill. Look at the lion there. We've put here the symbol of Britain. Let's read that scripture again. The first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. Oh, isn't that interesting? This lion, which represents Britain, the Bible said, but it had eagle's wings. In the beginning, it had eagle's wings. But those eagle wings were plucked. Whoa, what could that mean? I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. During Queen Victoria's remarkable reign, the longest in British history, 1837 to 1901, the empire had grown by more than 10 times, from a scatter of disregarded possessions to a quarter of the landmass of the earth and a third of its population. Oh, that's kind of interesting. You would think an empire that was the largest empire ever to exist, that covered a quarter of the land of the earth, the earth's mass, the land. You think that might be mentioned in the Bible somewhere? I think it's mentioned right here. It had changed the face of continents with its cities, its railways, its churches, etc. Now, let me tell you this about it said, when we read about that other beast, it said it looked like a lamb. Everybody knew Britain, or the United Kingdom, the leader of the United Kingdom is supposed to be Christian. In fact, if you go back to that time, you'll find out that there was a big teaching on this thing called British Israelism. They taught that they were Israel. You can track, they have genealogy that shows that Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth, was actually the great-great-great-great-granddaughter of King David. And they've got the bloodline tracked. They said that the throne in England is actually David's throne. They claim to be Israel. Now, whether it's valid or not, there was a whole lot of teaching. There's a whole lot of people that believed that they were Israel. And there were prophets teaching at that time, prophecy teachers from England, teaching that they were the ones that were going to take over Jerusalem. And they did. Oh, isn't that interesting? That's kind of interesting. Anyway, so there's some history here. What can we say about these eagle wings? Where did we see eagle wings in the book of Revelation? We said the woman was Israel, remember? And to the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle. So it looks to me like the 2 wings were torn off the lion and given to Israel. Just given to Israel. What could that mean? That she might fly into wilderness, into her place, where she is nourished for a time and a half a time from the face of the serpent. What's interesting is the 2 wings of the eagle coming off the lion, and then 2 wings of the eagle being attached to Israel. Look at the next picture. Does this make sense? I think this makes sense. The wings were plucked off. Remember, why did we have Independence Day? Why do we have Independence Day? We broke away from Britain, right? We are the wings. And who's been given to Israel to help them out, to make sure that God's plan is done? It's been the United States of America. I think the prophecy has been sitting there ever since the time of Daniel. So going back to about 2,600 years, God said this. How did God know? Well, I should ask this. How, like the skeptics, how could Daniel have ever known? Daniel, he knew because God told him, and God knows everything. Praise God. Is this true or not? Look at the things I have. The bald eagle was designated as the national bird of the United States in 1782. You can see the insignias here. A familiar sign. The United States of America is actually equated with eagle's wings. Whether you want to, agree or not, it is equated with an eagle. You see it all over your money, right? Okay, so we had a lion and we had eagle's wings. And those eagle wings seem to have appeared on Israel, which really suggests that maybe this was Britain and the United States. Because there ain't nobody else in the world helping out Israel. Did you notice that? Everybody hates Israel except for some people in the United States of America still support them. It's getting bad, though. Not everybody in this country is supportive of Israel.
We have allies, but they are only true friends.
Right. And they're a democracy out there as well. And they're surrounded by the enemy. The same enemy who calls us the great Satan. How many beasts did Daniel see? 4 beasts. Okay, you had the lion in the wings. What was the next one? Well, let's look so you can remember. Oh, here's a bear. I wonder what that could mean. Behold, another beast, a second like a bear. It raised itself up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between the teeth of it. And they said to it, arise, devour much flesh. Look at the image that they chose to represent their the emblem is a bear rising up on one side. We didn't choose that. Russia chose that. Right around, look at the timing. 1917. Right after England takes Jerusalem, Russia declares itself to be the bear rising up on one side. And the devouring of eat much flesh. Does anybody remember the Soviet Union? Does anybody think we might be on to something here? I do. I mean, maybe you don't, but I do. Let's go to the next one. We had another one. We had a leopard. So after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads. And here's the key. Dominion was given to it. Remember the beast in Revelation? Who gave the beast his power? The dragon, right? The dragon was a symbol of Rome. Who did Rome give the power of the Holy Roman Empire to? Germany. Remember he put the crown? They put the crown upon Charlemagne, who's the First Reich. And then it was split. We said it was split into France, Italy, Germany, and Germany ended up being the 3 Reichs that we know of. And so we have references down there at the bottom. I believe the identification of the leopard is Germany. You can see, in fact, we have a Nazi symbol because what was Adolf Hitler? Adolf Hitler was the Third Reich, right? Now, we don't have to be really that intelligent or swift to look at that leopard and say, okay, if it represents the Holy Roman Empire and there's been 3 Reichs, how many Reichs are there going to be if that really represents Germany?
There's 4 heads.
There's 4 heads. There's also 4 wings. Is it possible? Is it possible that the Bible is saying that this leopard represents Germany, which is going to have 4 Reichs? It receives 3 mortal wounds, and then the 4th one will rise up. And doesn't that really answer to the Daniel's fourth beast being the Roman Empire, the horn coming up and going all the way into the Antichrist kingdom. All for over 2,000 years, we see that beast around, and we go through these four heads. Now, we haven't seen the fourth head yet. If we saw the fourth head, then it would be a done deal. I believe what God is showing us is He's showing us what's about to happen in our time. We're going to see it in our time.
What are we talking about the fourth Reich?
People, and you can see it. They've been talking about it for some time. And, you know, if you think about Europe, if you think about that whole area over there, who's in charge? I mean, who's really in charge? Germany's in charge. Also, is this like God? I mean, when you talk about mortal wound, when after Adolf Hitler, did anyone think it was possible for Germany to come back into power again? Remember when it was split and part of it was in Russia? And in fact, one of the requirements at the end of World War III was, or World War II, was that Germany would be split up like that. In fact, it was split up in four pieces. From what my memory says, I don't have it here, but my memory tells me it was actually split up into four pieces. So here we have this handsome little devil, and I do mean devil. And he is Adolf Hitler, and you can see his picture up there. He is known as or equated with the Third Reich. In fact, people don't know about Charlemagne, and they don't know, about Wilhelm, and they don't know about Otto and the things that we've talked. They don't know about Napoleon, but they do know about the Third Reich, don't they? So let's look at the next slide. I would like to know the truth about the fourth beast. Now, before we put up the other Reich, so why not have Hitler up there as the Third Reich? So that's what we did. Okay, so right about the same time as Hitler rises up, do you remember who his buddy was in Italy? Mussolini. Oh, remember we brought up his name before. Let's look at the next slide here. The Papal States and Benito Mussolini. By 1861, much of the Papal States territory had been conquered by the Kingdom of Italy. Only Lazio, including Rome, remained under the Pope's temporal control. In 1870, the Pope lost Lazio, and Rome had no physical territory at all, not even the Vatican. Talk about a mortal wound. Is it possible that Rome, that the Vatican can rise up after receiving this mortal wound that Napoleon began to inflict upon him? Oh, look at it. Rise up the fascist leader, Mussolini. Italian fascist leader Benito Mussolini solved the crisis between the unified Italy and the Vatican by signing the Lateran Treaty granting the Vatican city-state sovereignty, and he gave them all the Papal States back. And since that time, the Vatican has been rising back up right in front of our eyes. In fact, here's something that most Americans do not know, because there's a lot of Catholics in the United States of America. But who did the Pope support in World War II? Germany, Hitler. And why? I mean, if you think about it, it makes sense. Because Germany was the Third Reich of the Holy Roman Empire, and it's the emperor that gives power to Catholicism. That's why they supported it. They were in favor of Hitler. Besides, they don't like Jews. Let's get rid of them, right? So they were behind that. Wow, this is really interesting, I think. Here we've got the Pope and Mussolini. Mussolini for his part, was very public in his effort to curry favor with the Vatican. By December 1922, he ordered crucifixes to be placed on the wall of every classroom in the country, then in all courtrooms and hospital rooms. He made it a crime to insult a priest or to speak disparagingly of the Catholic religion. When's that coming to America? I'll be in trouble. He required that the Catholic religion be taught in elementary schools, not Catholic schools, public elementary school. Mussolini recognized he needed the church to help create genuine popular support for his dictatorship. Oh, that kind of sounds like the wisdom of Napoleon. Mussolini seems to be much more in favor of Catholicism all the way around, supportive of the Pope. Anyway, soon the pontiff and the dictator entered into secret negotiations through emissaries. The result was a historic Lateran Accords of 1929. Under the Accords, Catholicism became, watch this, the only religion of the state of Italy. Vatican City became a sovereign territory with the Pope as its supreme ruler. The Church officially recognized Italy and diplomatic relations were established. The state extended mandatory religion instruction to the secondary schools, not just elementary, and recognized religious marriages. And also, did you know that there's only one head, religious head, that has a seat in the United Nations? The Pope. Well, how did he get a seat? Because he's a king. He's a king over Vatican, the Papal States. He's a king. He's sovereign, and he's a nation. He's a leader of a nation, and that's why he has the right to sit there. So he's a religious leader over the United Nations, and he's a king over sovereign territory. You think when the Pope speaks, the United Nations might pay attention? I think he has a voice. He certainly has a voice in Europe. And the things that are happening, you know how we talked about the Muslim, the immigrants, the Syrian refugees coming in, and how you had the clay and the iron mixed up. Did you know throughout all of Europe, the nations consist of between 20% at its lowest to 30% at its highest Muslims are already in throughout Europe. 20 to 30% of Europe is already Muslim. They need a religious leader. And they don't need a religious leader that will rise up and call for the Crusades. They're afraid. Europe is afraid they're going to offend the Muslims and they're going to have war all over. They don't want to stir up all these Muslims in a crusade in their own land. They need someone with the knowledge to unite these two religions together. Who's the man for the job? The Pope. And how's he going to do it? Because although I know you all think that Mary, those apparitions of Mary, are supernatural and are all from God, I know you all think that. But I think the Pope has some influence in this game that's being played. And I don't doubt that there's supernatural things going on. But wouldn't it be interesting if you could find a man on earth that could unite Catholicism and Islam together with supernatural apparitions that he controls? Enter Mary. Wow, it's getting good. Okay, so many people have asked this, and some people, in fact, after World War II, they thought, well, I thought that was the Antichrist. I thought the end should happen. Some people were expecting the end to happen in World War I. But here we are. So what was Hitler the Antichrist? Well, remember we said they had the 4 heads on the leopard? Well, it's just coincidentally, it also had 4 wings. There were 4 primary or main men in the Nazi party. It was Hitler, Himmler, Goebbels, and Hess. You can look that up anywhere. They were the 4 main players in Hitler's Germany. So all of these things, A through I on the bottom underneath Hitler's picture there, those are all facts that will point to the Antichrist. Biblical facts. Watch this. Number 1, Antichrist is supposed to have an insignificant beginning. Anyone who knows anything about Hitler knows he had an insignificant beginning. In fact, he was so insignificant, he was nothing until he got himself involved in the occult. Also, let me throw this in. We've talked about that seed of Satan. Remember, it says that the dragon gave the beast his seat? And that seed of Satan that came from Pergamus is in Berlin. And it was in Berlin at the time. He had an insignificant beginning. He was a political and military leader, which the Antichrist is supposed to be. He had a propaganda minister or a false prophet whose name was Goebbels. He had Rome as an ally, who was Mussolini. He persecuted the Jews for 7 years, and the last 3.5 years was by far the worst persecution. Does that sound true, like the tribulation period? Yes. Hitler tattooed a number on the Jews' bodies, giving them both a mark and a number. Hitler had his own mark, the cross, the swastika, which he is identified with. In fact, I don't care. And nobody knows anything about anything we've talked about from the beginning when we started the book of Revelation teaching. You can ask anybody. Show them the swastika and tell them, who does this make you think of? We all know who it is, right? He has his own mark, and he is so identified with that mark that everybody knows what it represents. Whether you're in this country or somewhere else, right? And then Hitler's body was thrown into a burning fire at the end. Isn't that interesting? They say he died by being thrown into a burning fire. Well, that's kind of like we read about the beast getting thrown into the lake of fire. Now, I'm sure some people will contest that, but as many people that would contest it would say it was true. So, and you can do some research yourself. So let's go to the next slide, because I want to know the truth about the 4th beast. Oh, look, we checked him out too. Because did Germany did the Third Reich receive a mortal wound? Sure. But what we've learned is there's 4 heads on the beast. There's been 3 mortal wounds already to all 3 heads. There's only 1 head remaining. And every time one of these Reichs goes down, another one rises. And if you don't have to be a Christian, you don't have to know anything about the Bible. You can look right now what's going on. Germany is ascending into an amazing, he's going to play an amazing part in the future of the control of Europe. They're already in control of Europe, by the way. Europe is going to undergo some changes here. And not only financial, but Germany is going to rise back up again. And I believe that will be the 4th Reich. The Holy Roman Empire, Germany, the Third Reich, receives a mortal wound. Right next to that 4th head, it says the 4th Reich. I can't tell you who it is. I don't know who's going to be the character that is the 4th Reich. But we will know soon, because I believe we're that close. These 4 beasts obviously were meant to symbolize the last days. We saw the meaning of the lion with the wings. We saw the meaning of the bear. And we saw the meaning of the 4-headed leopard. And yet there's one other one that rises up, and he's got 10 horns. You remember the scripture that says when the Antichrist rises up, there will be 10 kings that'll be of one mind and work with him? So that one's going to come up too. And you may just have to buy a ticket and be here for the tribulation to find it out, but we may not see it. I'm going to pass on the ticket. How many ever heard of the Big Three? This was from World War II. You had Stalin. Remember, Russia was with us against Germany, right? You had Stalin, you had Roosevelt, and you had Churchill. And you can see we've got, of course, we have Russia down there, which is the bear. We have Germany, and we have the British. The lion with the wings represents Britain and the United States. But throughout all of this, the next slide shows us those 10 horns. What have they been trying to accomplish all the way down through history? A one world empire. All of Europe is in favor of a new world order. Both Democrat and Republican, for the most part, are in favor of a new world order in this country. All the way through the Bible, they've been pushing this unity, this Roman Empire. Remember, you've heard many people historically say, the revived Roman Empire, the revived Roman Empire. And what is that? A one world empire, right? We started reading about that beast rising up. And it had 2 horns, remember? Let's go back to that. There's a 2-horned beast rising up out of the earth. This is supposed to represent the 2-horned beast rising up out of the earth. The scripture says, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. This beast, the 2-horned beast, was able to breathe life into an image of the beast. What would the image of, we talk about the 7-headed beast, what would the image of that beast look like? The 7 heads, right? If I make an image of Laura, she's going to look like Laura. Right? If it's an image of Brandon, is it going to look like George? No, it's going to look like Brandon. What the scripture says, it mentioned a beast, and then it says that the next beast was going to breathe life into the image of that beast. What is an image? An image is a picture. It's a graphical representation, right, of something. It's an image, a picture. And it says that this beast that rises up will breathe life into this picture, this image. I believe what we have here is the image of the one world government. And it's saying that this beast is the one who gives life to this image. Who historically breathed life into the image of the one world government? Who was the one who breathed life into the image? In other words, you got an image, but who made it come to life? Who made it materialize? This beast rises after... Remember, you got the 7 heads, so you had the 7th head appears. That was Turkey. Turkey lost Jerusalem. And then a 2-horned beast rises up, takes over Jerusalem, remember? And some beast breathes his life into an image of a one world government. How much have we heard New World Order, New World Order, New World Order? Every president, Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. Congressmen, senators, they're always talking about the New World Order, the New World. Well, let's see what happened. Did you ever hear of the League of Nations? There was the League of Nations. League of Nations is interesting, but it is because it is the first time that this image of this one world empire, we're not talking about Europe, we're talking about an empire that's supposed to rule over the whole world. Somebody Somebody wrote down the master plan in 1918 as one of his 14 points summarizing Allied aims in a World War I. The United States President Woodrow Wilson presented a plan for General Association of Nations. The plan formed the basis of the Covenant of the League of Nations, the 26 articles that served as opening rules for the League. The covenant was formulated as part of the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War I in 1919. Although President Wilson was a member of the committee that drafted the covenant, it was never ratified by the U.S. Senate because of Article 10, which contained the requirement all members preserve the territorial independence of all other members, even to the joint action against aggression. During the next 2 decades, American diplomats encouraged the League's activities and attended its meetings unofficially, but the United States never became a member. The efficacy of the League was therefore considerably lessened. However, this plan, this image created by Woodrow Wilson, the United States of America, became the League of Nations, which is the predecessor of the United Nations, which is supposed to be a governing body that controls the whole world. It's United States of America who breathed life into this image. Notice that here's a picture of the League of Nations. Here is a list of all the nations that were a part of it. Now the United States is not in there. But you can think of a major country, it's in there. They all agreed that this would keep, that what they were trying to do is prevent, the whole purpose of the League of Nations was to prevent another world war. Again, I ask, who breathed life into the image of the beast? And I got a clue up there. We used to play, with my grandson, we used to play Blue's Clues. Okay, find a clue. It's a clue, it's a clue, it's a clue. Well, there's a clue up there. Does anybody see what it is?
The flag.
The flag. I believe the United States of America is the one that breathed life into it. Look at the heads here. You know how the United Nations is set up? This was set up similar. This is the predecessor. All the nations were supposed to have representation, but there were permanent members. Now, in the Bible, it says the beast has 7 heads. What do we have here? We have France, Japan, Britain, Italy, Germany, and the USSR. There's only 6 heads. There was supposed to be a 7th head there. You know who the 7th head was supposed to be? U.S., right? Interesting, the beast only has 6 heads. But the Bible says this, in its fulfillment, it'll have 7. The whole purpose of the League of Nations was to prevent another world war. Well, Japan did something and attacked somebody, and they got mad at Japan, so Japan quit. And Germany decided they were going to, cause World War II, and so they quit. And these nations fell out because they didn't want to listen to the rest of the nations, right? And so, watch this. The image of the beast, which was the League of Nations, received a mortal wound and ceased to exist. But it provided the groundwork for the United Nations. The one world government received a mortal wound beginning 1939. It was replaced in April 8th, 1946, after World War II. The League of Nations was superseded by the United Nations. If you wanted to describe this to John, you could say, and I saw a beast. It was unlike anything. And then there was this other beast that rose up and breathed life into the image of this beast, and it came to life. But that beast received a mortal wound. But then it came back to life. That's exactly what happened with the League of Nations received a mortal wound, was breathed into existence by the United States of America. And I hate to say that, but it's true. And it became the United Nations. Have you wondered, how can we be so idiotic in this country to support the United Nations when they hate us? They never vote in favor of the United States. Never. They're all against Israel except for us. Why do we continue playing this game? And oh, by the way, when the new one came up, we joined. See, we wouldn't join the first one, but not only do we join it, the presidents keep saying, let's support it, let's support it. In fact, there's many of your politicians want to surrender our sovereignty to the United Nations. They want to take away your weapons to the United Nations. They want the United Nations to be in charge. Yes?
In the late 90s, when Misty was in the Marine Corps, they tried to make all the United States soldiers wear United Nations uniforms, and the Marine Corps balked, and they, as a unit, refused to do it, and so it kind of made it away. But it'll come back.
It'll come back.
Pictures of the
It'll come back.
they were trying to push.
Now, if you think I'm trying to scare you, I am. I'm not trying to scare you so you have, terrified at night. Trying to scare you to the point where you realize where we're at. I mean, we've been looking at signs. Now we're looking at this, right? I mean, what can we look at next? Well, the picture you have here, this is a United Nations building. And this guy up here, he's the boss. He's a CEO. When they're voted in for 5 years. And then, after the 5 years, it's traditional, as long as everything's all right, that they would vote him in for another term. But no more than 10 years, okay? He's in charge of the Security Council. The Security Council is the one with, that's the one with all the power. In fact, the prophecy about Antichrist says that he'll be insignificant. And in fact, in one scripture we read a few weeks ago, it says, by flatteries he obtains the kingdom. Remember that? We were talking about the Antichrist back in the book of Daniel, in the 11th chapter of Daniel. We talked about Antiochus Epiphanes and how he obtained, and we said his horn represents Antichrist. Now, I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, but you got to put all this together, all these things that the Bible says together. Are we ripe for the end? Yes. Are we ripe for a Fourth Reich? Yes. Is Germany going to rise up? Is it going to all change? Yes. Are there 20 to 30% Muslims in Europe? Yes. Is the Pope going to be called upon to unite these people? How can you unite these two different people together? Only the Pope could do it. Okay, so here's the way it sits right now. The Security Council consists of 15, okay? But 15 nations. There's 5 that are permanent members, and 10 which are voted in every 2 years. They change. So it has. Interesting. Remember, I said in the beginning that this beast represents the best picture of the beast that I've ever seen, because all 10 horns are on one head. Look at this. You got 6 heads, and you got this 7th head with 10 horns on it. The permanent members are Britain, France, Russia, China, and the United States. And then the Security Council, 10 horns, is that other head. The only thing that's missing is there's only the 5 heads plus the one with the 10 horns, right? But it's almost here. It's almost here. Is it possible that they're going to make some sort of change, and it will come to its complete manifestation, and a new leader will take over, and that leader may very well be the Antichrist? And for the first 3.5 years, we won't know it. But then he'll be revealed. Very possible. The United Nations is composed of, look at the number, 6 main administrative organs that direct the functions of a... Remember we get to 666? How many heads do we have right now? 6, right? We have 6 right now, one being the Security Council, 10 horns. So the United Nations is composed of 6 main administrative organs that direct the functions of a wide array of committees, agencies, and funds, though the General Assembly supervises the work of the other 5 administrative organs. The Security Council is the most powerful branch of the United Nations. The Security Council is the most powerful body in the UN. It is responsible for maintaining international peace and for restoring peace when the conflicts arise. This next phrase is terrifying. Its decisions are binding on all UN members. Now the U.S. has a vote. But if the U.S., and who makes the vote, by the way? The President. The President makes the vote, right? Or they can veto. But whoever's the President of the United States, they can cast the vote for the U.S. And it says here that when the decision is made, it's binding on all UN members. In other words, if the President of the United States votes against the people of this country and goes along with all the rest of the heads on the United Nation, the people in this country are in for a heap of trouble. It's very important who is the president. That means they can say, well, we believe Christianity. Those crazy people that believe in biblical prophecy, they're the threat. So they define what's a threat to security, to determine how the UN should respond, and to enforce the decisions by ordering UN members to take certain action. Oh, by the way, the person who sits in charge of the Security Council that we saw this picture, his duties and his powers aren't really expounded upon or defined. He kind of makes them as he goes along, just so you know that. Like it doesn't say he can do this, but he can't do this. The thing that's supposed to keep him in check is that he needs a consensus, right? He needs a consensus of these permanent members with the veto power. So he can enforce his decisions by ordering UN members to take certain actions. In other words, if the President of the United States votes in favor against the people of the United States, then the leader of the United Nations can send in forces from the United Nations to stampede the people of the United States of America, to confiscate their weapons, to do anything that they want until we surrender. And that's where we're headed, exactly. For example, the Council may impose economic sanctions, such as halting trade with a country it considers an aggressor. In other words, they may someday decide no country is going to do business with the United States of America until we come down to our knees. The Security Council has 15 members, 5 of which have permanent seats. The Assembly elects the other 10 members for 2-year terms. But something's still wrong with the picture. The picture says there needs to be 7 heads for the thing to come to its fulfillment, right? I'm going to suggest something. See number 6? I'm going to suggest that very shortly a change is going to be made. Germany is going to become one of the permanent members to the United Nations. That's going to make 7 heads on the beast. That's going to complete it. You're going to have 6 permanent members plus the 10 horns. The head with the 10 horns. You will have the perfect picture that's in the book of Revelation. We show the 4 heads of the leopard before. Just remind you of this scripture in Daniel 7:6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads. Dominion was given to it. It's interesting that in the book of Daniel, these 4 beasts, remember we talked about successive empires before, but these 4 beasts at the end, they all exist at the same time. They're all here at the end. In its fulfillment, here's what we have. When we get all done, when this beast, this world empire, this is not just an empire. This is a world government. When this finally in its fulfillment is there, it's interesting that when you first are exposed to Revelation chapter 13, it talks about the beast, but it doesn't mention the woman. It just says the beast receives a mortal wound, but then when we see it again, as in Revelation 17, when it's talking about Babylon the Great, because it says that she rides on the beast. Well, right now, she's really not in that position. And that beast is not in that position. It's not in its entirety yet. So here's the things that are going to happen. And I'm on shaky ground here, because I'm telling you things before they happen. I'm telling you what I see before, but it's all in the Bible. But here's what I think is going to happen. You watch Germany to rise up. All these European countries, they're gonna have a new constitution or something. They're going to submit to Germany's sovereignty. That's going to cause, they're going to have an emperor, just like they have all the way down through history. The First Reich, the Second Reich, the Third. Now, he's going to accomplish what Adolf Hitler tried to do. He's going to be the Fourth Reich. He's going to be the emperor. But after that happens, or in the same timing, all of the United Nations, the permanent heads, they're going to agree Germany needs a seat as a permanent member. Why? Because of their economic capability. And so they're going to give Germany that seat. Now, maybe it's not true, and I'll stand. If it doesn't happen, then I was wrong. But I'm saying this is what I see. So then the seventh head. The one that's missing will be Germany. So you're going to see the Fourth Reich. You're going to see Germany take a position. And then you're going to see the Pope called in to unify the religions together starting in Europe. There's going to be a tremendous manifestations of the apparitions of Mary. Because remember, the beast makes the image speak. And what is an apparition of Mary? She's an image that's speaking. It not only makes the image speak, but it makes the image bleed. How many have seen the bleeding statues, the crying statues? These are false miracles. All this is coming, and then you're also going to see a new leader in the United Nations. And the question is, will he be the Antichrist? Now, he may not initially. What if the guy that's elected, he's not really the Antichrist, but he gets shot?